Hello, everyone. Welcome to Move More, Worry Less. I'm your host, Paige Vesta, the founder and designer at 13 Fit. Today's guest is return guest, Tim Paulson, to talk about this year's CrossFit Games, which just so happened to be his 6th CrossFit Games, which is crazy awesome. So we talk about his experience during the games, his thought process through the different workouts, and his plans for the future. So let's dive right in. Tim, I'm so excited that you're here today. And I feel like I have so many questions. But before I start getting into all my questions, how are you feeling post games? Like how's the vibe right now?
Vibe is good. Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud and kind of excited with how this year's games went. So that's, I guess, nice because it's been a couple years since I've really kind of felt like, I guess, super content, kind of with my efforts and with the weekend as a whole. So that's definitely nice. And yeah, it's allowed me to really kind of take a little bit of time off, with an exception of the rogue qualifier, which we can probably get into a little bit. I started having to work out hard a little earlier than I was planning. So yeah, I mean, I usually like to take a couple weeks off, just do classes at my gym, take rest days whenever I feel like it, and kind of wind things down. And also, my wife usually has a list of house projects to get done because I haven't done a whole lot of stuff for the last couple months. But yeah, so no, I'm feeling good. Kind of ready for the next stage of the season, which is going to be Rogue in the next about month and a half here. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I saw on Instagram that you were doing the Rogue Invitational. I was like, that was a really quick turnaround.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely not ideal, but it's also, I would say, probably the peak off-season competition for a lot of athletes, as far as exposure, depth of the field, competitiveness. It's only 20 athletes, and it's automatically invited the top like 12 to 15 at the game. So, I mean, the field's as competitive as you can ask for. I mean, really outside of the CrossFit Games. So it's definitely really high up on the list. I really wanted to do it. And I finished not quite high enough at the games to get an invite this year. So I was like, all right, crap, I guess we're doing the qualifier. And it was really soon. So, yeah, we just kind of rolled in off of a few class workouts and hoped that sending it would be enough. And turns out it barely was. So, yeah, we got it done, and I'll be doing that in the end of October. So it's really exciting, though.
That's awesome. Okay. So I want to start kind of big picture and then kind of work through some of like the moments in the games and talk a little bit about mindset, because I know you're really big on mindset.
Yeah.
So I feel like every year in the games, it's a little bit confusing how we get to the games. So how was this year structured, and did you feel good about it? I mean, let's just
Yeah.
like dive into the big picture of how it worked.
Yes. I mean, this year it was the first time since 2018 that we had 2 years in a row of the qualification process being the same, which was really nice.
Yeah.
It's still a little bit muddy at various points. But yeah, so basically this year it goes relatively linearly: open, quarterfinals, semifinals, games, with a little caveat of the last chance qualifier. So basically, for anyone who's not super familiar with CrossFit, anybody can do the open. It's you do it over the course of 3 weeks in your gym around the world. So literally anybody can sign up, do it. Top 10% advance to quarterfinals. That's another online stage of competition. For quarterfinals, depending on which continental boundary you fall in, so I fall in North America, you're allotted a certain number of spots to semifinal events. So North America has the largest contingent of competitors and participants in CrossFit, so we have the most spots to semifinals and to the games. So to semifinals in North America, there are 120 spots available. So from the quarterfinals, the top 120 men and women advance to semifinals, which is your first in-person stage of competition. So you've got 4 semifinal events with 30 men, 30 women, 30 teams, and you're competing for 5 spots to the CrossFit Games. After that, it gets a little bit muddy because the top finishers that don't make the games worldwide advance to a last chance qualifier. And that number of slots varies a little bit. So in North America, spots 6, 7, and 8 advance to the last chance qualifier from every semifinal. And then from other places around the world, it's anywhere from 2 to 3 spots outside of that as well, of your qualifying positions. So you end up with 30 people in the last chance qualifier, 30 men, 30 women. And that's another online stage of competition, and only 2 people go. So 2 men, 2 women go to the CrossFit Games from that. And that basically ends the field. So semifinals, you've got 38 athletes from around the world that qualify. And then from last chance qualifier, you get two more women and two more men to make up your field of 40 at the games. And this year I qualified through the last chance qualifier. So I finished 8th at my semifinal, which got me into the last chance qualifier, but didn't get me a game spot in person. Went to the last chance qualifier, ended up winning it, and was able to go to the CrossFit Games from there. So that was kind of big picture how things flowed. And that was the same as last year. So that was kind of nice. Like I said, there are some nuances in there that we can talk about that are a little bit confusing, but that's kind of the broad structure. And it was the same as last year. So at least we knew what we were getting into, even if some of the details were a little bit different.
Right. So you ended up going to the last chance qualifier. I would love to talk about that time period between semifinals and last chance qualifier. What were you doing to prepare? I mean, fitness wise, obviously, but also I know that you're really big into mindset. Like, what was that process like for you between those two moments?
Yes. So, I mean, for me, actually semifinals, I was really happy with my performance. So it was pretty easy to kind of ride a high from that, because even though I didn't qualify, like being a guy who's, very process oriented, very like, just kind of very dialed into like, did I execute and did I not? And like, granted, I made some mistakes at semifinals, like it wasn't a perfect weekend. I had one or two slip ups in two different events that cost me possibly that 5th spot. Wouldn't have been for certain. Like obviously there's no way to kind of see the future if I had done things slightly differently. But I mean, on the whole, I was really happy with where my fitness was at in the semifinals. And I was really happy with how I executed the semifinals weekend as a whole. A lot of really good performances. I won an event. I managed a lot of events really well. So on the whole, there was a lot to be really proud of and really happy with. So it was pretty easy to ride that high into the last chance qualifier. And also, knowing that I'd qualified for the last chance qualifier, I knew that my season wasn't over. So again, it's pretty easy to stay fired up because you're not done yet. Like it's like, the goal of making it to the CrossFit Games and, improving there is still alive. So what do you have to be upset about? Like, yeah, granted, like it could be easy to get, kind of mired up and like, oh, well, crap. Like I didn't qualify here. And that's like a really big bummer. But at the end of the day, the goal is to get to the CrossFit Games. So as long as there's a path to the CrossFit Games, I'm not like, I can't really be upset about it. And especially with, like I said, I was really happy with where my fitness was, things like that. So like there was a lot to be proud of. And the last chance qualifier was a really quick turnaround. It was only, I want to say I had like maybe 2.5 weeks from semifinals to when the last chance qualifier started. So frankly, there wasn't a lot of time to think about anything. And that was kind of worked in my favor because again, with a lot to be proud of, with a lot to kind of build on, it was like, all right, we don't need to change anything. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to stay fit and stay hungry. So basically the period between that was just, again, kind of staying on the ball, going back to some classic CrossFit stuff, playing with some things that we thought we might see in an online format. And I remember one of the Chase Ingram, who's one of the broadcasters, I ran into him and Brian Friend right after the Granite Games had wrapped up, which was my semifinal. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, hey man, like, great job this weekend. How you feeling? And I was like, well, I guess we're going to go qualify for the last chance qualifier. That's it. Like, like there was no moment of doubt as far as like getting to the games. It's like, I know I'm fit enough to get there. And now I just have another opportunity and another route. And that's the route that we're going to go. So that was basically it. Just kind of stay hungry, stay fired up, and trust that fitness was there.
Yeah. And then you obviously crushed the last chance qualifier. So what was that like? And I just think it's so cool watching you like throughout your seasons, because like last year you were like sliding all over the place to get like those quick finishes. And then this year you like came into the last chance qualifier and made it. It's like you're just not taking no for an answer. You're like, I'm going.
Yeah. No, we're not going to leave any stone unturned. And that's like, especially with how developed the sport has gotten. I mean, it's like making the games or not is a game of seconds. Like you're at work, like the sport is at a point now, which is a great thing. And from a competitive standpoint, from a fan standpoint, like guys are very fit and the field is getting deeper every year. So like there's no room to be lackadaisical anywhere. But the last chance qualifier was about as stressful as it gets from a competition standpoint, because it's a blind leaderboard. So, you're doing workouts alone in your gym. You have no idea where you stack up. And the way that it went was it started Wednesday at noon Eastern time and it finished Friday at noon Eastern time. And you had two 24-hour windows to do 2 workouts each. So Wednesday at noon, Thursday at noon, you had 2 workouts that you had to submit, film, have judged, all that stuff. And then Thursday noon, Friday noon, you had 2 more workouts. But the leaderboard didn't open up until 4 o'clock on either of those days. So like the leaderboard didn't go live until Thursday at 4 p.m. So for me, I did a workout Wednesday afternoon after it was released. I did another workout Thursday morning. And then those were the first 2. I submitted those. And then I did the third workout Thursday afternoon before the leaderboard was even open. So I basically did 3 workouts having no idea how I had done. So that was like, it's super stressful because like as an athlete, you're like, well, shit, I would really like to have some feedback. Like when you compete in person, you finish an event, you can see how you did against your heat. And pretty quickly after that, the leaderboard's updated and you can see how you stacked up and you know where you are. I train alone a lot. I push alone a lot. So like, I know what it takes I know how to make myself hurt without any competition. So like, that's something that I've kind of always been pretty good at over the years. So I was confident in my ability to do that for the last chance qualifier setting because that's what it demanded. Like it demanded just giving it your absolute best effort without having anybody to pace off of. So I knew that I could do what was required, but it was still crazy stressful because by the time you saw the leaderboard for the first time, you had 3 events down and I only had 1 left. So it's like there's only so much you can do at that point as far as like,
Right.
oh, if I'm in 4th, like I need to make up 30 points. Well, okay, great, but you've got 1 workout left. Like, what are you going to do? So that part of it was pretty stressful just because again, by the time you had information, there wasn't a whole lot you could do with that information. So you were really relying on just a highly executed, really like top-notch performance on each workout. And that was it.
Right.
Obviously I was able to do that. Like I said, it's a strength of mine for sure. Like being able to kind of go black by myself. So, I was able to execute and I was able to, get what I needed to get done what I needed to get done. But I want to say Thursday afternoon when the leaderboard opened, I was in, I forget, it was either 3rd or 4th place. And they only take 2 and I was like 30 points out. So I knew that I needed a big final day because of how
Yeah.
competitive the field is and it just how tight it was going to be. And I think on the last 2 workouts, I came in second by a second, and then I won the final workout. So obviously I had a really strong finish to the competition. And yeah, found out that Friday at 4 o'clock after golfing all day that I had qualified. So that was pretty sweet.
That's so awesome. Did you change anything about your process training for the games this year versus last year? Like what does that look like?
Honestly, not too much. Like obviously our training program evolves. Like, we're constantly looking to push the boundaries a little bit differently. But part of it also was like you had a new programmer. So Adrian Bosman was writing the programming instead of Dave Castro. So you weren't quite sure what you were going to get there. Our guess was that the games were going to be a little bit more classic CrossFit oriented, maybe a little bit more skill focused. So I would say our prep for the games this year, obviously there's a lot of volume that goes into it because it is a 4 or 5 day competition with multiple workouts a day. So your body needs to be ready to handle that workload. So there's a certain increase in volume that is required when you kind of start leading up to the games. But at this point in my career, we're also balancing that with the fact that I'm older. Like, I'm 32. I'm qualified for the games when I was 26 the first time. Things feel very different now. We've got a kid in the mix. Life is different. Stress levels are different. So there's a lot. Things are very different now. And at the end of the day, the goal going into the games needs to be feeling good. Like you have to be feeling not only fit, not only confident, but feeling healthy. So, walking that line is a little bit different now. Like I said, than it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So, the process has evolved a little bit. Again, it's still the hardest training block of the year because obviously you're peaking for the pinnacle. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything in your power to be as prepared as possible. But on the flip side of that, we didn't find out we were qualifying for the games until like 5 weeks before the games. So there's
Right.
only so much you can really do in 5 weeks. Like you're not going to be making any dramatic changes. So a lot of it was really just, again, continuing to keep my body feeling good, making sure I stayed healthy, stayed injury free, and just kind of, really just getting the volume in, like making sure that we got some high volume training days, training weeks in so that my body could be ready to handle the long weekend.
Right. For the few days before the games, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume that you might be a little bit stressed or nervous, or there might be some sort of anxiety, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Um, how do you manage that?
Um, I've gotten better at it over the years. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to like getting super comfortable with being in the moment, like, really kind of staying present and understanding what can be controlled at any given time.
Mhm.
It's really, really easy to let your nerves get the best of you. And like, that's definitely happened to me a lot in the past. I'm a very emotional guy. Like I'm not afraid to express my emotions, whether it's with my wife or, like, it's just, I'm pretty, I guess, I'm pretty in touch with my emotional side. And I think it's a good thing, especially when it comes to competing. Like, again, it's good to give a shit. It's good to care. Like, like if you're walking out there numb, you're probably not going to walk out there and put out your best performance. But there's a fine line between being in touch with how much it means to you and doing what's healthy to make that performance your best effort. So like for me, in the days leading up to the games, there's a certain amount of visualization that can occur. Like once you find out some events, you can start to walk through some events. You can kind of start to walk through the days and things like that. But for me, a lot of it comes down to staying, I guess I would say, helpfully distracted, like finding activities that can distract me from the stress, but don't distract me from the magnitude and the importance of what I'm about to do. Like, again, it is the peak of my season. Like, to treat it like anything other than that would be stupid. But I can't sit around stressing 12 hours a day about the fact that the peak of my season is 3 days away. So, it's a little bit easier with a toddler running around because there's a lot of parenting to be done, and there's a lot of chasing and things like that. But my wife is also obviously awesome. So, like for me, the days leading up to the games, we're kind of just normal family life. Like we would get up, I'd play with my son, we'd have fun, have breakfast, we'd again kind of blow some time, go to a park, things like that. But then my wife would also, kind of take him out, and like she would take him out for an hour or two so that I could have an hour or two of downtime. And like I could, whatever that looked like, whether it was laying in bed reading a book, whether it was literally just like taking naps, stretching, just having some time to decompress and be present with, again, my emotions and like with what I was feeling, the stress of the moment that was coming up, things like that, and like kind of dealing with that. And basically essentially just alternating between all of that all day for those few days. So then my son comes back and, again, dad mode, playtime, enjoying myself, just kind of enjoying the phase of my life that I'm in right now. And then again, going back to like, okay, like hey, could you take him downstairs for an hour? I'm going to go, I just need to go unwind. Because again, it's really important to not get too mentally or physically overloaded in the days leading up to the games, because the days of the games are incredibly draining and stressful, both mentally and physically. Like the days are very long. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of just being told what to do, being told where to be when. Your schedule is completely not your own. So you need to have like the highest mental capacity possible going into those days. So it's important to kind of balance the distraction with the stress and just kind of like, I guess, appreciate it for what it is.
So for the moments between your events at the games, are you doing like, is your mindset similar in that respect? Or are you trying to stay helpfully distracted, or are you 100% in focused mode, or what's that look like?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I've definitely it took many years to figure it out. I think I went through times, and this goes for all competitions, not just the games, obviously. Like, this is the same for semifinals when have done Wadapalooza every year, things like that. You have to find the balance that works for you as a person and as an athlete and kind of what fits your style. There were years where I took everything way too seriously, and that didn't suit me. There were years where I went into, I was too lax and I was too far on the other side of the spectrum, and I didn't feel like I was ready for events. So there was a fine line, and I think I've definitely found it, obviously, now as I'm in the kind of latter stages of my career. And for me, it's definitely once you're 30 to 45 minutes from call time. So you have a call time for every event, which is basically like, hey, this is when you need to be chipped. You need to be ready to get into corrals. Your warm-up needs to be largely complete. 30 to 45 minutes of call time is when I'm back in me space. Like I'm back in like the very focused, like, okay, I'm going through the motions. I'm focusing on my breathing patterns during my warm-up. You're really kind of dialed in thinking about the event very like specifically and how it's going to play out. Until that moment, though, I've definitely found that I'm happiest when I'm kind of bullshitting. Like, I'm with friends in the back. We're shooting the shit about life and like any whatever. Like I'm not focusing on my on anything else. Like I'm not focusing on the competition. And I think that's what I found has worked best for me. So, like I spent like this year, just based off of kind of how things went out, I spent a lot of time with like Travis and Brent. We just so happened to be sitting with each other. So we would spend a lot of time just kind of chatting and again, shooting the shit, joking around and just kind of, enjoying being there and enjoying each other's company and just kind of like, talking about maybe sometimes the events and oftentimes not. So that's kind of what works best for me. Obviously that's after also a bit of a decompression period. Like once the workout ends or once the event ends, there's a certain amount of reflection that goes on, talking to my coach, talking through the performance, making sure that we're, kind of acknowledging any successes or failures, because obviously you don't want to carry baggage and bullshit from event to event. You want to make sure that you shut the door after one event and it's fully in the past, whether that's good or bad, whether you're riding an emotional high, an emotional low, whatever it is. So that period comes first, but then, like I said, once that's done, it's into just, again, like relax, unwind, have fun, scroll social media, listen to some music, chat with your buddies, and just kind of like be completely detached from the event.
So I feel like we have to talk about this moment with the Echo Press where you went quote unquote full send. That was so bananas. And it was really cool listening to the announcers talk about you like the whole time, because it kept coming up throughout the rest of the games. So sorry. I'm sitting in like a really shitty chair and it's very uncomfortable.
Oh no, you're good. I'm in a recliner right now, so I'm definitely, my camera angle is a little weird, but I'm comfortable.
You're chilling. I'm sitting in like a hard metal folding chair, but the fancy studio over here. So in those moments, I don't know if you can remember what was going through your head or if it was just something that took like what was happening in that moment.
Yeah. So, it was definitely, it's definitely going to go down as one of my top moments in my competitive career, as far as just like, memories. Certain things are just really cool. Like certain events kind of come along that allow you to express a strength of yours, and like, so the clean and jerk ladder from a couple years back, like, being able to cycle a barbell, racing guys, like there are certain things that you're, as an athlete, you're like, I've got this, like I can do this thing. And I know for a fact that I'm one of the best in the world at it. And for me, it's like, we do a lot of interval training. I know that I'm always good for a full send. I'm always good for a full dummy on a machine. It's definitely it is an absolute strength of mine. So, going into that workout, I was really happy to see that there was an assault or an echo bike sprint to finish. Cause I was like, okay, when I get there, I know that no matter how I feel, I'm going to go full dumbass. Like there was no question in my mind from the start, because I've done it 100 times, like I've done so many workouts where it ends on a machine and you just sell your soul, you die, so like I knew that I had the capacity to do it. But in the event, there was a lot to get there. We were dealing with a new movement standard. We were dealing with a movement standard that was frankly pretty questionable as far as like an athlete's perspective, knowing when you'd achieved it, because there was no finite finish. You were kind of guessing because you couldn't see how low you needed to go. You were trying to cross a line that was completely out of your peripheral vision. So you're kind of just guessing a little bit, and we didn't have a lot of time to practice. So it's not like there was a lot of stress going into the event, just because, again, it was a new movement. So every echo bike before that was just pacing, because we all knew that it was kind of a handstand push-up workout. So I mismanaged the event a little bit, which was kind of a bummer. But again, it was like, I didn't know my capacity. So it wasn't that we didn't make a poor choice in, I guess, with foresight. We made a poor choice in hindsight, because again, like we couldn't know until we did the workout that we needed to be a little more conservative on the handstand push-ups to start. But anyway, that aside. So as I was getting to the last set of handstand push-ups, I was getting pretty tired, and I was like, I just need to get to the bike. Like this set is good. Like, again, my shoulders are really tired. You just need to make sure your reps are high quality. Don't get out of your head. Like you can't think about the bike right now, even though you're kind of excited for it. Because I knew that I was going to be able to drop the hammer on it, especially because frankly, the handstand push-ups were taking forever. So my heart rate was recovering a little bit. But yeah, so basically I was like, all right, I just need to get on the bike with 30 seconds. That's it. I was like, in my head, I was like, okay, manage the fatigue, push the boundaries a little bit if you can, but don't fail and not give yourself an opportunity to get on the bike. And I was able to do that. I got on the bike at it was just after 9 minutes, 9:05, 9:10, something like that. And basically I was like, literally, I just like the second I finished my handstand push-up, that I just looked at the bike and I was like, well, this is it. like you got the time. Now you just need to do what you need to do. And obviously it becomes a lot easier when like, you know, the events in the Coliseum are always crazy. You know, the crowd goes wild for certain things. And like, just to hear, like, you know, it'll get me a little like fired up now, just like kind of like thinking about it. Like the second I started full dumb, like the second I got on the bike and went at a pace that was quite obviously too absurd, like it was obviously very dumb. Like the place went bananas. And I mean, just like, so I closed my eyes and it was just like my own, obviously, like confidence and ability to do it combined with like the fans absolutely losing their shit and the place just going bonkers. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to die here. Like this is 100% like, I can't slow down now. Like this place is losing their mind for me to finish this. So it was just like a full throttle down, like blackout experience. And yeah, I was able to get it done. And obviously, like I said, it was just like, you know, when my judge's hand went up and I was almost on the bike, like the place erupted even louder. And it was just like, it was such a cool, you know, moment to be in. Like definitely one of those kind of times in sport where like the crowd gets into it and you're just like, you find a Superman gear. You're like, I am fully willing to die right here. So yeah, it was super cool. And will definitely go down as one of my top competition memories ever for sure.
Yeah, it's cool hearing the story behind it because as like a spectator just watching, like we're watching all of the athletes go through the workout and we don't know what's going through your head, but it's kind of interesting to know that you plan to go crazy essentially.
Oh yeah.
Like you knew you were going to do that, but as a person just watching, we're looking at the time and we're like, oh, he's just, you know, just decided in this moment. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's really cool. What was your favorite event of the games and what was your least favorite?
Favorite event. Oh God, I gotta like do a full recall now. I mean, it's definitely easy to say that event was my favorite just because of, you know, because of the crowd, because of the moment that it was. Like it frankly had nothing to do with the event and everything to do with the moment, you know, like, and I think so if I were to try and differentiate like a workout from a, you know, like my top moment at the games, I guess I would probably say the Capitol was probably my favorite workout. For two reasons. One, it was a really cool, well-rounded test. There was a lot of strongman implements. There was a lot of heavy implements. And there was also a really long aerobic demand. So like having those two things, you know, like pig flips are a super high anaerobic activity, you know, and then you've got your long run, which is obviously super aerobic. And then you get to the end and you have to try and lift a bunch of heavy shit while you're tired. So like that workout was really cool, just from a programming standpoint. And also from an execution standpoint, for me, I was really, really happy to be able to showcase my improvement with running. So like, you know, I passed like 6 or 7 guys during the run. Like I was really happy with how I felt, how I was able to push the pace I was able to hold. So like, I guess from a fitness and execution standpoint, as well as a programming standpoint, I really loved that workout. And also finishing at the Capitol was really cool. Like the fans down there were crazy. Nobody was expecting it. I mean, it was lined from the second we climbed the hill to the Capitol all the way throughout the Capitol to the finish line. It was lined 5 to 10 people deep the whole way. And like, that was really cool. Like people, you know, to kind of come into that race environment when you're under fatigue, you're really tired. Like that was awesome. And the workout ended with just a lot of suffering like that. I mean, that Husafel bag carry at the end was really just, I mean, soul crushing.
Yeah.
And I like a workout that ends that way. I like a workout that ends with just like, who wants it more? So that was really cool. You know, I'll definitely remember trying to carry that, the feeling of, so we'll live this out together a little bit. When so we had to run up a hill to finish the run and you're like, oh, come on, fuck hills at this point. Like I'm really tired. It's been like 30 minutes of working out. Like I'm exhausted. You come up the hill, you pick up your jerry can, so which is basically just a heavy farmer's carry. You have to walk them up a bunch of stairs, which again, you're like, okay, this is hard, but it's manageable. Then you have to carry them flat across the Capitol, and then you go downhill again, and you drop the bags off. And it's like, oh, thank God. Like I'm going downhill with the bags. This is nice. You drop them off. And then in my head, you drop the bags, and I just had this moment. I was like, I'm running downhill right now. I don't like where this is going. And so you're running kind of downhill. And then the course people make they point, they're like, all right, go this way. You turn, it's more downhill. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going downhill again. And in my head, I'm like, I have to pick up a 200-pound sandbag at some point. And I really don't like that I'm just continuing to go downhill. And you finally make one more turn, you pick your head up, and you see the bags at the bottom of the hill, and you're like, Jesus Christ. You're like, this 200-pound sandbag is sitting at the bottom of a hill, and that means I have to march it back up the hill.
Oh
So
my
you're
God.
like, so mentally you're just in this moment of like, not panic, but like, holy shit, this is going to be really bad. So like, you go pick up the 200-pound sandbag, you're allowed to carry it any way you want, toss it up on my back, and it's a 200-pound bag just crushing your spine. And you're like, at that point, you're just like, okay, stare at your feet and just don't put it down, just walk. So like bags on your shoulder, you're walking uphill, and like I think I was counting steps, and I got like 100 steps in. I was like, okay, you can look up now. And I looked up, and there was still more hill, and I was like, okay, that was a bad idea. Look down again. So I like looked back at my feet and just kept walking, and I was able to walk it all the way to the drop point, and we had to transition it to a front rack hold and walk up the stairs. And the workout ended with a front rack walk up the stairs, and it was like 5 flights, and it was really bad, soul crushing and awful. So anyway, but I loved that event. And like, I think, again, it's cool, I think, to share from like our perspective, like what went through our heads and why it was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely a really cool event. As far as my least favorite event, I guess I would have to say the skill chipper probably. And not because it was of its programming. I think the programming was unique and cool, and I liked it from a programming standpoint. But from an execution standpoint and from a things I can't control standpoint, it was super frustrating. I on the first, so it was basically 3 ascending skill intervals,
Right.
and there were cuts after each interval. So that all 40 men did the first round, and then the top 20 men got to do the second round, and then the top 5 men got to do the last round. And I got cut on the first interval, and it was one of those things where I executed it really well, and then I got a no rep that was, I knew at the time, was completely unwarranted, and after seeing videos of it, it was also completely unwarranted. Like, the judge just made a bad call.
Yeah.
So that one left a really sour taste in my mouth, just because, again, from my standpoint, I executed it to the highest level that I could, and I did enough to make it to the next round of cuts and get to showcase a higher level of skills. But something out of my control took it away from me, and like, that's always super frustrating, because again, there's nothing you can do. And like, that was probably the most pissed off I've been competing in a long time. Like, it was just, again, it was a really high stakes moment. The one no rep knocked me out of the top 20 and put me in like 25th. So not only did I lose valuable points, I lost the opportunity at a top 10 finish. I lost the opportunity for a really good finish. And it was through no fault of my own. And that was just super frustrating. So that was a definite low moment for me as a competitor. And like I said, it had nothing to do with the workout and more just to do with the circumstances.
Yeah. I'm only going to make you recall one more workout.
Yeah.
The 1 rep max with the sandbag.
Oh,
As a spectator, that was my favorite event. I was like screaming. It was just so exciting. Like, it starts kind of slow, but then towards the end, it was just like, it was so exciting to watch. And you finished really close to the top. So, and I was watching the way that you were doing it, and it seemed very intentional. Like, I was like, he has a process in his mind right now. So I would just love to talk about that event. It was so cool to watch.
Yes, I mean, I'm glad it looked intentional. That's good. I mean, it was that event was definitely exceeded expectations by a lot. So like, in the back, we had warm-up bags that went from 240 to 270 to 300, which was not super helpful, because we were told that we would have all the weights that we wanted. So, in the back, like, we had a strong man, a professional strong man, come back and show us the technique. And obviously everyone's on their phone, like YouTubing videos, like, how the hell do I lift a sandbag better? So we're all back there trying to figure out technique, things like that. And like, we tried a few different things, and we settled on, okay, like, we're going to do it the typical strongman technique style. It should pay off as the bags get heavier. But in the back, I like hit 240, and I was like, okay, that was pretty heavy, and that was really awkward. And then 270, I failed it like 3 times. And then I got it once, and I looked at my coach and I was like, I'm not touching 300. There's like, all it's going to do is demoralize me. There's no point in doing it right now. Like, it's not going to help. It's not going to make me feel any better.
Right.
So we only touched 270 in the back. So, and I was in the same boat as a lot of guys. Like, a lot of guys were in that boat of like, well, this could be a crapshoot. Like, this could be very bad. So yeah, we walked out on the floor, and like, I don't want to say my expectations were low, but like my expectations were very much like one bag at a time. Like I have no idea how heavy I'm going to get. All I need to do is lift one bag at a time and try and kind of figure this thing out on the fly and hopefully get a little more confident. And I think that was definitely apparent when I failed like 270 maybe, or like I failed one of the early bags. And yeah, so like I failed it, and then I was like, they were pretty lax with the rules. They were like, hey, look, if you feel good and you want to do it again, like, we're not going to cut you off. So like, a failed lift wasn't necessarily the end. So like, it was a little bit low stress in that sense, which was kind of nice. So I failed, and I was like, okay, like it was just a technical failure. I know I can do this. So I like looked at my judge. I was like, hey, like, I'm going again. Don't kick me out of here. So I hit it the second time, got pretty fired up because I was like, okay, like, screw that bag. We're back on the mark. But, it was definitely at that point, it's like, okay, shit, like every bag could be the last. So every bag was definitely, I was approaching the bag as if like, okay, this is max effort. It could pin me to the ground and I could fail. So yeah, I guess that's where the kind of, hopefully the intentional piece came across, because again, it was like, I was approaching every lift. I mean, frankly, they were PRs. Every single bag after 270 was the heaviest I'd ever lifted. So, it was like, I was going for a maximum attempt every single time. So yeah, I mean, basically it just kind of like went through, 280, 290. I started to get a little bit of confidence, and I was like, okay, like things are getting better. But it was also like, you look around you and you're like, no one's failing, so like, and I think a lot of guys were kind of feeling the same, where like, because of how things went in the warm-up area, we kind of assumed that like, if you clean the 300-pound bag, maybe you'd be in the top half, like top 20. And we got to 300 pounds and there was like 27 guys left. And we're like, what the hell? Like, how long is this going to go on for? So like, and same thing. So I hit 300, was pretty excited, and a couple guys failed at 300. So I was like, okay, maybe we're starting to get towards the point where it's going to really matter now. And I want to say, so like going into 310, I was like, okay, you got to hit 310 because this should be a big difference maker. And I hit 310, was super fired up. Like, it was heavy as all hell, but I hit it. I was like, all right, this is exciting. We got another one bag, and only like 5 guys dropped out. And I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, oh my God. So it was like, just like that moment where like, you're like, wow, we're going to have to lift really heavy here to be successful. And then I want to say, at that point I was like, okay, 320 has to be the one. Like, it has to be the one that guys drop out on. And so I hit 320. That was like absolutely maximum effort. Like, I think the lift was easily 30 or 40 seconds. And I was fired up beyond all belief, because it was like, again, in my head, I'm like, okay, this is it. Like, this is the one. Whatever you do, the bag doesn't go down. Like, you're going to get it to your shoulder, even if it means just, the ugliest, gruntiest shit you've ever seen. Just get it done. So I got it done. And like, that was the moment where like I finished. I was super fired up, but it was kind of the last of my adrenaline, if I'm being honest, like, because I'd been getting myself into a 1 rep max mindset since like 280. So like 280, right. 290, 300, 310, 320. Like, I'd gone, I'd fully emptied the adrenaline tank 5 times at that point. So I finished 320 and I was like, all right, awesome. And like, another 5, 6, 7 guys failed. And I was like, okay, thank God. We're finally starting to make some moves that were actually looking like a good finish now. But I went to I got walked over to 330 and I was like, all right, like, full hype, man, let's go get the crowd fired up. And I just like looked at the bag and I was like, I have nothing. It was just that realization of like, I have nothing left. So I went to pull 330 off the floor, and it might as well have weighed 500 pounds. Like, it was right. Just one of those things. Like, I moved it 3 inches and was just like, nope, there is absolutely nothing left. And frankly, at that point, I was kind of assuming a lot of guys would be in the same boat, where like there'd be another really large round of failures at the 330 bag. And because there was a tiebreaker, I was like, you know what? Don't gas yourself out trying for 330 if you're pretty confident you don't have it. And I was like, again, I was feeling sapped. My adrenaline was gone. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. Just kind of start to get your mind right for the tiebreaker. And I want to say there ended up being like 6 guys in my tiebreaker, 6 or 7. And I ended up coming in second or third. So like it paid off that, like again, doing
Right.
well in the tiebreaker was easily 15 points. Like, doing well versus poorly was easily a 15, 18 point spread. So the decision paid off, but like I said, I don't think there was any world I was cleaning 330 regardless. So it was kind of just it was a good decision in the moment anyway. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of the coolest events ever. The crowd was getting super fired up. They really seemed to enjoy it. And like, it was definitely like the broiest moment ever because it was just, you and your 20 strongest, fittest buddies just slinging heavy shit with pretty much no technique whatsoever. So
Right.
it was definitely like if they could have like tested the air for testosterone on the Coliseum floor that night, it would have been off the charts because it was just a bunch of dudes throwing down. So it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to execute and do. So yeah, definitely another top event for me, just as far as like fun factor.
Yeah, it was really cool to watch and just so impressive because every bag that came out, I was like, all right. Like basically what you were thinking, like everyone's gonna fail this one. And it just like it kept going. I was like, wow, it's unbelievable how strong these athletes are. Like,
Oh
especially
yeah.
doing something like you said, you haven't necessarily done that before. You're PRing all over the floor.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild.
It was, yeah, I mean, it was, and that event was like, I mean, also, that was Saturday night. So that was like before the cut. So there was also the added stress of like, I had botched, I think was Saturday. I had screwed up one of the events earlier in that day. Like I had made some mistakes and I was like, well, God damn it. Like I put myself way closer to the cut line than I was hoping. Like I wasn't really expecting to have to fight for the top 30 cut, if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
So I think I went into like that event like 28th or 29th, and the guys behind me were only a couple points back. So there was also the added stress of being like, you need to lift these bags or you are done. Like your weekend is over, bro. Like you're like, so, and the way it worked out is that we were in a line and the guys in front of me were the guys who were directly behind me on the leaderboard. So it was literally a moment of like, if the guy in front of me hits the bag, I have to hit the bag. So
Right.
like it got to that point where also I want to say it was about 310. I think it was 310 where two or three guys who were behind me on the standings but in front of me in my line had failed, and like so going to 310 it was literally like it was a moment where I was like, okay, if you hit 310, the guys behind you are out. So if you hit this, you're pretty much locked in. So
Right.
that was definitely a factor as well of like when I got to 310 where it was like, okay, all the stress is on because again, if you hit the bag, you're in. If you miss it, you could be in a bad spot and you're leaving a lot up to fate. So there was also that went into it as well.
Right. So this year you came in 23rd, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So awesome. So what's your plan now, like moving forward, going into the next season? Do you have anything that you're thinking about changing? Anything you're gonna add into your daily routine or, um, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess first off, like, I'm really happy with 23rd. I think
Yeah.
again, my like talking with my coach in our debrief from the weekend, even in a best case scenario, so like even going through and like looking at the two or three events where I was like, damn, I really left some points on the table here, whether it was through something outside of my control like the skill chipper, or whether it was through mistakes that I made in execution, or XY, like whatever factor it was. Best case scenario, we were looking at like a 20th place finish. So like, all things considered, it's like, every place matters, obviously. Like, yeah, 20th is better than 23rd. But, it's like on a whole, my finish was a pretty accurate reflection of my fitness. And like it's nice to feel that way. Like it wasn't like, oh well damn it, like I really kind of missed the ball this year. I really screwed up some events, something like that. So that was really nice, like again, to kind of have a finish where it's like, nope, like that's very indicative of where we were. And that feels nice. It's nice
Yeah.
to execute the weekend and feel like you really earned your finish. Like obviously would
Right.
I have liked to have done better? Oh, hey buddy. Like obviously would I have liked to have finished higher? Yes. But like given the breadth of tests that we faced and my preparation, execution, the way the season folded out, like I was really happy with it. So like it's a really good feeling to kind of end the season on. As far as moving forward and things we're going to change, we're not really fully there yet. I will say that I have told my coach this. I have told my wife this. I have told some of the coaches at the gym this. This is my last year as an individual. So like I am, the 2023 season, I'm going to be 33. I've been in the sport for over a decade. Frankly, my body feels great. Like, could I keep doing this longer from a physical standpoint? Like, yes. And that's why, I'm kind of I don't want to take advantage of that longer than I probably should. And there's also the fact of just like life and balance factors, like anybody like I'd like to think that I've done a decent job, halfway decent job of balancing the things that matter most to me over the last, 10 years in competing, especially the last couple of years with COVID and with having a kid and all those things, like keeping my family at the forefront of everything. But anybody who says that you can find optimum balance while trying to go to the CrossFit Games is lying. It's not possible because the demand on training, recovery, sleep, like just all of the factors that go into it, the way that it dictates what you can do throughout your year, the way that you have to plan being home versus not being home, you can travel, like so much goes into it. And the effect that that has on me personally and on our family and on the gym and like on all of these things, like I'm not going to say I take it for granted, but like it's a fact that's been very known to me, and it's becoming more and more apparent the further I get into it. And like, again, especially having a kid really kind of amplifies a lot of those things. So, we're going to give it one more really solid rip. Like, we're going all in for one more year. The goal is to be back at the games in 2023. But after that, it's time for a shift. So it's time for, training to take a back seat on a year-round basis, to be able to get back into the gym more, to start coaching more, to take some stress off of my wife, my family, as far as when we can travel, what we can travel, having these week blocks throughout the year where she has to take off work and, it's a stressful weekend. It's like, there's just a lot that goes into it. And the demand on the athlete is really high, but the demand on the athlete support system is even higher. And like I said, I just, my Caitlin has been incredibly supportive over the last decade and especially the last few years. And like, I don't want to burn that past its lifespan. Basically, again,
Right.
she would never tell me no. She would never say, stop competing, it's too much. Like, never. She would never do that. She knows how much I love it. She knows how much it means to me and how much I love the process and the journey of it. So it's on me to say no then. And I think, like I said, I think this year is going to be the last go of it because it's just, it's time. I'll be back for Masters in 2035. So don't worry, everybody. I'm not done competing forever, but I'll be back for the 35 to 39 category in 2035. But anyway, so as far as how that relates to the season, we've got Rogue coming up really soon, which is awesome. So there's not a lot of time to think as far as that's concerned and how it relates to the rest of the season. So the Rogue Invitational is in the end of October. So it's Halloween weekend. So we've got basically 6 or 7 weeks out for that. So we're going to get into a really serious training block here and kind of ramp up for that and kind of really focus on peaking and giving my best effort for that weekend. And that's basically all we're thinking about for right now. After that, we'll go into a little bit more of like, we'll take another off season. So we'll take a few weeks off. We'll kind of de-stress, decompress, and let the mind and body reload between basically kind of Halloween and Thanksgiving. And then leading into the holidays, we'll start to ramp things back up for the season in full. So I can't really say what we're going to do differently at this point. I think things will look different because of the programming aspect of it. The way Boz programmed the games versus the way Castro did, there was a little bit less focus on overall volume and I would say abuse. The weekend was still really physically demanding, but in a different way than we've seen in years past. There was a little bit higher priority on skills, on execution, things like that. So I think that might affect a little bit how we approach, kind of going into semifinals, going into the games, things like that. But we haven't fully debriefed that yet because, like I said, we've got Rogue to focus on for now. Rogue is, like I said, it's a very high prestige event. Like it's only the best of the best athletes. Like it's your best finishers from the games last year. The qualifiers, very small margin. Like it's some really great athletes that made it through the qualifier. There's a lot up for grabs as far as prize money. Like there's just a lot on the line. So we're putting a lot of effort and a lot of thought and stress into that event, and making sure that goes as best as possible. So yeah, we're kind of all eggs in that basket for now before we worry about anything past that.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to watch you through this next season and your last season of competition. And I feel like I just have this gut feeling that we're going to make some really badass shirts, probably the best ones yet. So I'm very excited for you.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll definitely, for anyone who's excited, we've got a very cool shirt inspired by the 2022 games that'll be coming out very shortly here. So
Yeah, oh yeah.
Something to get excited about.
Yeah. All right, Tim. I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for taking time today to talk to us and to rehash the games. I know it's been a couple weeks since they happened, but I'm glad that we got to do this, and It's been really fun.
Yeah, no, it was a blast. Honestly, it's really fun to like debrief the games and kind of live through some of the events in hindsight. So it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me back on.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Move More, Worry Less. If you love this episode, please subscribe, share, rate, or review us to help us grow our mission. If you don't already, follow us on social at 13fit Apparel and visit our website at www.13fitapparel.com. Thanks for listening.